表しているということになります。はい。そうですね。で、本日はですね、まず、アンディさんよりプレゼンテーションをしていただきまして、ご質問がある場合はですね、チャットボックスの方にお気軽にご質問をしていただけたらと思います。はい、今日のですね、ウェビナーはYouTube で同時配信となっておりますので、カメラをオンにしたりとか、マイクをオンにしたりとか、ということができないものになっておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。はい、そうですね。はい、それではですね、何かご質問がある場合はお気軽に、チャットボックスの方からご質問していただけたらと思います。はい、それでは、ウェビナーを始めていきたいと思います。Andy, could you please start your presentation?
Hello. Thank you very much, Hiroshi. Yes, of course I can. Welcome to the presentation today. I will just share my screen. Hopefully this should work okay. Hiroshi, can you just let me know, is everything okay? You can see my PowerPoints.
Yeah, I can see your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I will begin. Okay, so thank you for the introduction, Hiroshi. My name is Andy, and I am the regional director for a group of schools called MPW based in the UK. And I am here today to give you some tips about applying to top UK universities. And so hopefully you will find this useful for your preparation for overseas study. So let's begin. So tip number one, okay, so choose your A-level subjects carefully, assuming, of course, you want to do A-levels. Okay, so taking certain A-level subjects will open up certain options available at university. Now, here's a good word for you, facilitating subjects. You may hear this term used every now and again. Facilitating subjects. These are the subjects which are most commonly respected or preferred or required by top universities to get onto a range of subjects. Now, facilitating subjects is actually old now. They have since replaced facilitating subjects with something called informed choices. And the reason why they stopped facilitating subjects is because facilitating subjects did not take into account students who wanted to study things like art and design or performing arts at university. It only really considered the very traditional academic subjects. And so to kind of update this, they've now replaced it with informed choices. But even though facilitating subjects officially is kind of old and out of date, unofficially, it still exists because you've got to remember that universities, in particular, the very high-ranking universities, they're quite old-fashioned, right? And so they're quite slow-moving. And so even though officially facilitating subjects no longer exists, unofficially, it absolutely does. Okay, so previously, the Russell Group used to define facilitating subjects as the following. That would be English literature, history, modern languages, that would be things like French, German, Spanish. Unfortunately, Japanese wouldn't count. Classical languages, such as ancient Greek or Latin. I don't know of any international students that have studied ancient Greek or Latin, to be honest with you. Of course, maths and further maths. The three sciences, physics, biology, chemistry, and geography. You've got to remember, though, that this list was first put together many, many years ago, maybe like 30 years ago, it was put together, and they never bothered to update the list. And so I would also include certain subjects nowadays as being facilitating subjects. And I would include subjects like economics, for example, psychology, I would say computing science, politics, sociology. These can all be considered facilitating subjects, okay? Now, certain university courses will require certain A-level subjects. I'm sure you guys are aware of this. So, for example, if you're interested in studying medicine, dentistry, or vet science, chemistry is absolutely essential, and usually at least one, if not two, from biology, maths, and physics. For economics, maths is usually essential. It's very, very rare, if at all, that you will actually need economics A-level to study economics at university, but usually maths is the essential one. Now, law, the good news about law is that there are no essential subjects for law. So this offers you a lot more flexibility when choosing your subjects, but it's good to have facilitating subjects or to have subjects which show logical ability and an ability to write. So kind of like essay-based subjects. That kind of makes sense. Computing. Maths is usually essential to study computing science at university, and certainly useful for all if it's not essential. Usually computing science is not essential, right? Okay, it may be a recommended subject, but usually maths is the essential one. And for engineering, of course, maths and physics are generally essential. Often at top universities, further maths will be preferred for these subjects. If you're interested in doing chemical engineering, you would be expected to do chemistry as well. Okay, so some universities and some courses will actually have a very clear list of subjects that they don't accept or they don't prefer. And so, for example, if you look at LSE's website, they will actually clearly state a list of non-preferred subjects for LSE. And those include A-levels in accounting, art and design, business, design technology, drama, film studies, health and social care, ICT. ICT is different to computing science, okay? So computing science A-level, that's very maths-based and that revolves around a lot of coding. Usually Python is the language that you would learn. ICT is not about coding, it's not about maths. It's more about understanding the hardware and how it interacts to form a computer. But it's always worth looking at universities that you're interested in applying to see if there are any subjects that they do prefer or that they don't prefer. However, regardless of what I've just said about everything, okay, so looking at university websites, facilitating subjects, all of this stuff, the number one rule above anything else when choosing your A-level subjects is you should only choose subjects that you are good at and subjects that you enjoy, right? This is the number one rule above anything else, because if you choose something that you're not good at or you don't find interesting, you're not going to do well. And so what's the point? Only choose subjects you're good at, only choose subjects you enjoy. So that's tip number one. Number two, research your university. Okay, so when students consider their university options for UCAS, certainly international students, usually they only consider one thing. And that one thing is ranking, right? Ranking, ranking, ranking. Is it good ranking? If it's good ranking, I will apply to it. But actually, ranking, in my opinion, is actually one of the least important factors you should be considering when choosing a university. And it's very much an international student thing. Domestic students don't focus on rankings anywhere near as much as international students, okay? So other things that you should really be considering apart from ranking would be things like, for example, the city itself, okay? Ask yourself, do you like big, busy cities or do you like smaller, quieter cities, for example, okay? If you do not like the city that you're living in, you will not be happy. If you're not happy, you're not going to study well. So do take time to actually look at the city and investigate what it's like to live there. The best way to do this, of course, is to visit the place, right? And you can do this only if you're in the UK. But the city is a very, very big thing that you should be considering when choosing your university. Think about the university, if it's got any sort of expertise in any subject area, in any subjects that they teach. So, for example, places like, for example, LSE, they're famous for courses like economics or politics, those kinds of courses, right? Imperial College, they're famous for things related to technology or engineering, okay? And so think about that, because if you're dead set on a certain subject, and if universities specialize in those subjects, it could be a good fit for you. Think about the location of the university itself. And when I say the location, I don't mean the city, I mean the type of university it is. So there's really two types of university available. You've got what's called a campus university. A campus university is a big, beautiful university, lots of green things, lots of grass, lots of trees, very old kind of Harry Potter style building, very large, but usually they are located far away from a city center, okay? Or would you prefer a city-based university? Not as big, not as green, not as pretty, not as many trees, but they are located either right on the edge or actually in a city center, so very easy to get to. Which one do you prefer, right? Think about the teaching styles of the courses and at those universities, usually there are two different types of teaching style. Okay, so there's something called PBL, problem-based learning, which is a bit more practical. And then you've got the traditional subject-based teaching, which is more lecture-based. Okay, which one do you prefer? As a general rule, PBL courses tend to be slightly more expensive regarding tuition fees than traditional subject-based teaching because of the facilities that they require. They have to build certain facilities for PBL courses, okay? Think about the entry requirements and be realistic. Have a look at their websites, have a look at the grades that they ask for, the IELTS that they ask for. Plus, some top universities and some courses, there will be additional factors that you have to consider. Okay, so for things like medicine, you have to do a UCAT or a BMAT. For law, maybe an LNAT. Top universities like Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, Imperial, they will likely have an additional entrance exam. Are you willing to put in the work required to prepare for these exams? Realistically, do you think you actually have the potential and a chance of achieving the grades and the IELTS required? You know, because realistically, if you don't choose those as one of your universities. Be realistic with what you can achieve, okay? Top universities are always looking for students with a proven academic ability, a real genuine interest in the subject area, plus your potential for the future, okay? Do not consider universities based on just the overall ranking. That's a really bad way of selecting universities, in my opinion. Don't select universities based on their branding, okay? Just because they're good at marketing doesn't mean it's the right university for you. And don't base your opinions on something called hearsay, what your friends say, what friends of friends say. What's suitable for your friend or a friend of a friend is not necessarily suitable for you, okay? So always take the time to make an informed decision about the right degree at the right university in the right city to suit you, okay? Not your friend, not your parents, not your teachers. The best way to do this is to actually attend open days and to attend masterclasses, which are open to the public. If you're in the UK, you can do this with other friends during half term or Easter break, things like this, okay? Okay, tip number 3, reading ahead. This is very important for top ranking universities, okay? So you've got to remember, if you apply to a top uni, like Oxbridge, LSE, Imperial, UCL, and if you're invited along for an interview, interviewers have dedicated literally their entire life to that particular subject area. They're going to be extremely passionate about their research, and they will expect you to be exactly the same. So it's very important that you read books related to that subject area, particularly if you're applying to the very, very famous universities, okay? Because then the chances of an interview are much, much higher, okay? What's important when you read is that you must be able to expand upon that content with your own ideas. So you cannot just repeat the information that you've read in the book. You must be able to analyze that information and provide arguments both for and against. If all you do is repeat the information that you've read in the book to the interviewer, they will not be impressed by that at all, okay? But you must be able to discuss these books in quite a lot of detail, potentially. And so it's much, much better for you to read just one book and be able to talk about that in a lot of detail than to read 20 books and to not really be able to talk about any of them at all, okay? So this is important. Do take the time to read. Number 4, extracurricular activities or work experience. Okay, so this is where the UK is very, very different to places like Japan. If you want to try and get to a top university in Japan, top Japanese universities really look at one thing and one thing alone, and that is your high school GPA. If you get a good high school GPA, you will get to a good university in Japan. And actually, it's the same in a lot of Asian countries. It's the same thing. All they look at is the high school GPA. However, in the West and in the UK, it's different. Top grades alone are simply not enough to get into top universities. You've got to remember that universities, they are communities, right? And they want students to join who can actually contribute to that community. They don't want students who just stay in their bedroom all day, every day studying. That's no good. They don't actually want that. So it's very, very important if you go to the UK or the West in general, that you demonstrate a range of interests outside of studies, okay? Your life cannot just be going to school, studying, doing lessons, going back home, playing computer games, and then repeat, repeat, repeat day after day. It cannot be like that. Think about your current contribution to school life, okay? Are you head boy? Are you head girl? Do you play sports or music for the school? Think about how this is significant for your application, okay? What does it show about you as a person? And why is this relevant to your application? Okay, so a really, really good way of demonstrating that you have done your homework about the subject area, you've done your research about your career, and you are still absolutely committed is by getting work experience related to that subject area, okay? So that's a really effective way of doing it. And it's a really good thing to write about as well on your personal statements, okay? If you do get work experience, keep a diary. That's very, very important because it's very, very easy for one day just to kind of blur into the next day and it all gets mixed up and confused. And so keep a diary each day. And the diary is not a list of things that you saw, okay? It is not like that. It is about your learning outcomes. What did you learn from that experience? That's what interviewers and admission staff want to find out, is what did you learn from that experience? It's not just a list of things that you did with nothing about what you learned. So think about what surprised you, okay? What did you like about it? What did you dislike? What did you find difficult and challenging about that experience, okay? It's about what you learned, remember, not just a list of things that you saw. Work experience is hard to get, right? You've got to be prepared to do it in the evenings or maybe weekends. The best time to get work experience, in my opinion, is during the big school holidays that you may have, summer holidays, half-term breaks, Easter break, that kind of thing, right? You must be willing to find this yourself. There is no school in the UK that will find work experience for you. There just isn't, right? Because for that to happen, schools would need a team of full-time placement officers. No school has that, okay? Some universities will have a placement team for something called a sandwich course. Sandwich courses are a 4-year bachelor's degree where you study the first year, you study the second year, third year, you do a work placement, and then you go back to university for your final year. Sandwich courses are really good. Not enough students do sandwich courses, in my opinion. And so that's something you should consider. However, that's at university level, okay? If you're looking to try and get work experience to write about for your university application, no school will get you work experience. You have to do this yourself. And it's not easy, especially now during COVID, during a global pandemic. It makes it a lot more difficult. Because of that reason, if you do have to get work experience for things like medicine, dentistry, vet science, and so forth, a lot of companies now are offering virtual internships. So online internships, they're not great, to be honest with you. Online internships, it's never as good as the real thing. But if you're really, really struggling to get work experience because of the pandemic, it's better than nothing doing a virtual internship. Okay, when you are doing work experience, when you are doing any extracurricular activities, whether it's voluntary work, part-time work, anything like this, think about how it demonstrates these types of skills, okay? Because you need to show off that you have these skills on your personal statement and also at interview, okay? So you need to think about how can you show that you've got leadership skills, good communication skills, that you actually have a work social life balance. Remember, they don't want students who just work all the time in the West, that you're dedicated, you're enthusiastic, you're able to manage your time effectively, you're good at teamwork, you're mature, you're responsible, okay? And so, for example, things like, were you the captain of a football team? That shows good leadership skills as well as teamwork. Do you play music to quite a high level? Because if you do, you had to practice for many, many years to get to that stage. And that basically tells me that you're very, very determined. You don't get put off easily. You're highly motivated. And when you put your mind to something, you're absolutely committed to achieving that goal, right? So think about what you do outside of studies to basically show off these skills. because you're going to show off these skills on tip number 5, the personal statement. Okay, so I've actually got a whole webinar just about personal statements. And so this is just going through tips very, very quickly. Okay, so if you go to the UK, then you do not apply directly to universities. Unlike in the USA or Australia, where you would send separate direct applications to each university, you don't do that in the UK. In the UK, you send one application to a body called UCAS, and you would put 5 choices on that one application. And on your UCAS form, of course, it will include your university choices, your subject choices, your personal details, and a couple of academic references. Now, the personal statement, what is this? This is a 1-page relevant autobiography. Autobiography is your life story with a maximum of 4,000 English characters. Okay, so there is a word limit or a character limit. Admissions tutors are very, very busy people. Okay, and so you've got to get to the point. It's got to be concise. It must cover any relevant work experience that you've done. Now, you will do just one personal statement for all 5 applications. Remember, you only submit one form to UCAS. Therefore, it's very, very important that you choose similar, if not exactly the same subjects as all of your 5 options, because that one personal statement has to be relevant for all 5 applications. Okay, so for example, if you choose 3 universities where you want to study business, and then you choose 2 universities where you want to study, let's say, engineering, right? Your personal statement will focus on business. And so when the 2 universities where you apply to engineering for read your personal statement, they're going to be thinking, right, hang on, you're talking about, hang on, business this, business that, you want to study business, you want to do, but what's this got to do with engineering? Nothing. Throw your application away in the bin. And so make sure that all 5 courses are very, very similar so that your personal statement is applicable to all 5. Here's a pro tip for you, since I am giving you tips all webinar today. So a lot of students, of course, you want to get to those top universities like Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. Well, if you choose to apply to a joint honours program instead of a single honours, you actually have a higher chance of being accepted at a top university, simply because there are far less applications and therefore far less competition for joint honours programs as opposed to a single honours. So for example, if you apply to Cambridge University for maths and economics, as opposed to just economics, you've got a higher chance of getting into that joint honours of maths and economics. Okay, so that's just something to consider. English is very important on the personal statement, of course. Make sure there are no spelling errors. Make sure the grammar is all good. If you don't do the preparation in terms of the content and the spell check and all of that stuff, you simply will not get a good place at university. Follow this code. And so at MPW, don't worry. If you come and study with us, we will basically walk you through your personal statement. Our personal tutors will basically go through every single draft with you. It will take many goes before you get the final draft. But at MPW, we recommend you follow this structure for personal statements, the 5-paragraph principle. Paragraph 1 is the introduction. Often that's the hardest thing to write, to be honest with you. And so a lot of students will actually leave paragraph 1 until the last thing to do, because it's usually the most difficult thing to do. Number 2, talk about your chosen subject area and talk about your A-level subjects. Number 3, talk about your work experience and any wider reading you have done outside of your school. Number 4, extracurricular activities, why they're relevant. Number 5, closing statements. Okay, so that makes for a nice structure, in our opinion. It flows, it's concise. Number 6, English. English is, in my opinion, the most important factor, the single most important factor for international students to be successful with overseas study. And the most important part of English, in my opinion, to be good at your studies is writing. Annoyingly, writing is also the most difficult part of English as well. So listening and reading, you are inputting information. It's very, very easy for you to practice this on your own. Writing and speaking, you are outputting information. You can't really do that on your own. You need a teacher, or you need to join some sort of English school or English lessons. The best way to improve English on your own is reading, by a long, long way. Okay, so reading is by far the most effective way of improving your English. Read anything. It could be books, it could be textbooks, storybooks, it could be newspapers, it could be magazines, it could be the internet. I don't care. Just read. But what you should do is buy yourself a notebook, and any words you do not understand, write them down in this notebook and then look them up in a dictionary. Okay, always, always do that. Make that standard practice. Every time you don't understand a word, write it down, look it up in a dictionary. It will help to improve your vocabulary. It will help to improve your grammar and also your syntax, how you basically construct a sentence. Okay, what is for sure is if all you do is just study English in your lessons, but you do no practice outside of lessons, your English will never improve. Okay, attending lessons alone is simply not enough. You have to practice outside of lessons. Now, this is one thing which is quite frustrating for me, because a lot of students, when preparing for overseas study, they will spend a lot of their time simply focusing on IELTS preparation. Okay, now, what you have to understand is a good IELTS score is not necessarily the same thing as having good English. It's not, because a lot of students will focus on just simply the IELTS examination techniques, right? They will focus on getting to know the little tips and tricks about what the examiners are looking for. And so they know what to say. They will basically memorize entire stories that they can just repeat on memory to answer most questions with, but they don't necessarily understand really what they're saying. It's just something that they've remembered, and then they just start talking and then repeat it, but they don't really know what they're saying. Okay, and so I've met students who have got IELTS 6 to 6.5, and when I've met them, their English is actually quite poor, right? And I know exactly what they did to get 6 to 6.5. They just studied the examination techniques, right? They didn't study real English. And so any student who only studies the tips and tricks to get a higher IELTS, but does not study real English, okay, you might get the IELTS certificate and the score required to start this particular course at this particular school or at this particular university. But once you arrive in the UK, you will struggle. You won't understand anything the teachers are saying. You will find it very difficult to make friends because your real English is actually not very good. You just focused entirely on the tips and tricks to get a higher IELTS score. So what's really, really important for students when I say English is key is two things. Whilst you are in Japan, you will need IELTS training because it's very, very difficult to get a good IELTS score without IELTS training. But it's also very, very important that you learn general, real English, not just examination techniques for IELTS. Okay. And an average student will improve by 1 IELTS over 1 year. Some students will do it quicker than that. Some students will do it slower than that. But this is an average. English, very important. Number 7, okay, prepare for admissions tests early. Okay, so a lot of subject areas now require something called an aptitude test if you wish to study at university. And so the most obvious courses that need an aptitude test will be things like, for example, medicine, dentistry, law needs one. Vet science doesn't actually need one, actually, surprisingly, but these courses definitely do need one. Some universities will have additional entrance exams as well, like Oxford and Cambridge, which are similar to things like UCAT, BMAT, those types of exams. Now, things like UCAT, very common for science exams, and BMAT. UCAT is made up of 5 sections, all of them multiple choice. BMAT is 3 sections, okay? Verbal reasoning question, science and maths, and a written essay. BMAT is a bit more traditional, okay? So it's a bit more similar to A-levels in terms of its format. UCAT is a little bit more weird, okay? A bit more abstract. There's a good word for you, okay? Now, these aptitude tests, they are not a test of medical knowledge. In fact, it's very, very difficult to actually revise for aptitude tests because it's not a test of memory. It's not a test of IQ. And so you can't revise for them and prepare for them in the traditional way, right? The only way you can really revise and prepare for these tests is by doing past papers. That's the only thing you can do, is do as many past papers as possible, okay? And what these tests are, they are testing your ability to understand and interpret information that they give you, and your ability to analyze information and to come up with your own conclusions. Okay, of course, there will be some academic content, there will be some academic questions. There will be UCAT, BMAT, LNAT, aptitude test training schools, I'm sure, in Japan. There are definitely many textbooks available that you can buy with many past papers and example questions. And if you do have to do an entrance exam, start practicing a few months in advance, okay? Start practicing past papers as far in advance as you possibly can. Number 8, the interview. Interview is a good thing, okay? But of course, a lot of students are very, very nervous about going to an interview, okay? So what can you do to help yourself? Practice, practice, practice. Of course, it will make you less nervous. You've only got one chance to make a good impression, so it really matters. Preparation, extremely important. Remember to read widely around your chosen discipline, okay? We've talked about this already. Talk to other teachers, talk to academics at open days, talk to other students if you go visit the university on an open day. Be prepared to be discursive at interview. There's a good word. That's where you randomly change subjects without warning, okay? During interviews, you should always try to establish why you will be an outstanding student for this university, how you're going to contribute to university life, what makes you stand out. Here are some example university questions. These are very, very standard questions asked by many universities every course. And so if you are invited along for an interview, I strongly recommend that you prepare answers to all of these questions, because these are very, very common questions asked at university. Why did you choose this subject? Why did you choose this university? Do not say, because it's top ranking. That's possibly the worst answer you can give, right? Okay, because it basically shows that you've essentially done no research into that uni at all. You've just looked at a ranking table. A good answer would be, okay, so I had a look at your website. I'm really interested in studying this. I noticed that you've got 2 professors who are working in this particular field and specializing in this particular subject area, which is something I eventually want to specialize in. And I see that they've done some really interesting research projects and written some really fascinating papers about this subject area. And so the reason I've chosen this university is because I would like the opportunity to work alongside these academics and to learn from them, because they are world famous in this particular field. And so I want the opportunity to actually work alongside these guys. You know, that's a good answer, because it shows you've really done your homework about the university, about the staff, about their subject specialisms. And also it shows that you are very, very passionate and enthusiastic about the subject you want to do. Why did you choose your particular A-level subjects? What did you read on the train, assuming you had to get a train to that university? What can you bring to this university? What are your weaknesses? There's a bit of a trick question for you, right? Because you've got to give an answer which is a weakness, but at the same time, it's also a strength. A very common answer to that, which I think is overused now, is I am a perfectionist. That's my weakness. I'm obsessed with getting everything just right, just perfect. It really bothers me when it's not. But also that's a very common answer, to be honest with you, nowadays. What work experience have you done? What did it teach you? Remember, it's about your learning outcomes. What do you see yourself doing after university? What do you see yourself doing 10 years from now, for example? What achievement are you most proud of? Why should we offer you a place? Our students have had some really difficult questions in the past at top universities. And these are some examples of the very difficult questions that they've been hit with. And these are real questions that have been asked to our students. One of our students, bang, was asked this first question of the interview: do you think you're clever? Another student was asked this: how much money is there in the world? How much money is there in the world? Often there is no right answer. There is no wrong answer to these questions. They just want to see how your brains work, right? And so, for example, how much money is there in the world? If you then sat there and started going, right, okay, So the population of China is about, oh, what is it? Like, is it like 1.3 billion? India, next biggest, is maybe what, 1 billion. Their GDP is about this, average salary is about this. And you start trying to actually work out how much money there is in the world. That tells the interviewers that you have a very linear way of thinking. It means you think like a straight line. They don't want that, okay? They want people who can think laterally, who can think differently. Don't be afraid to throw questions back in their face. Okay, so define money, right? That's an impossible question to answer unless you define money. Does that include property? Does that include equity in companies, stocks and shares, right? In some countries, they use animals as currency. So it would be things like chickens or goats or cows or sheep or pigs. Do they count as money? And so unless you have a very clear definition of money, it's impossible to answer that question, right? Don't be afraid to throw it back in their face. What are the fundamental differences between engineering and physics? Okay, so anyone applying for engineering, I would hope that you kind of have an idea of the answer. I think I have an idea of the answer, I think. And so I believe physics are essentially the laws which govern the world, which dictate how the world works. There are no chemical reactions in physics. And engineering is where you take those laws and apply them to solve a problem. That's essentially what engineers do, is they basically solve problems, right, using maths and physics. Should someone sell their kidney? Interesting. I suppose if it's enough money for me to retire, yeah, I'll sell it, sure. This is a question that was asked to one of our medic students. About 1 in 4 deaths in the UK is due to some form of cancer. Yet in the Philippines, the figure is 1 in 10. What are the reasons? Okay, so the only way you would know the answer to something like that is through reading. This is why extracurricular reading is very important. I do happen to know the answer to this. In case you're wondering what it is, okay, so the UK is actually a developed country, whereas the Philippines is a developing country, okay? And so, yeah, whilst 1 in 4 deaths in the UK is due to some form of cancer, the mortality rate, so the death rate in the Philippines, is actually much higher than the UK, also at a much lower age than in the UK. It's just that the reasons for mortality are different. It's not cancer. It will be other reasons, such as, for example, trauma and things like this, okay? Read is very, very important. Okay, I believe this might be my last tip, hard work and sacrifice. Okay, so many students want to go to Oxford and Cambridge because they're #1 ranking, right? We all know this. But honestly, is every student suitable for Oxford and Cambridge? Of course they are not. How can you tell if you are suitable for Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, LSE, those types of universities? Okay, there are certain signs. First of all, you're on top, you're on track for top A-level grades. So you're predicted 3 A stars all the way. Not just that, but you have achieved top grades in every subject that you have studied in every year. Okay, that's a really, really good sign for Oxbridge, LSE, Imperial, medicine, dentistry, vet science. You get top grades in every subject every year, and you are predicted top grades for your A-levels. That's the #1 way of telling if you're suitable, okay? If you're not getting top grades in every subject every year, usually you won't be successful, okay? That's just, you're not the typical profile of student that would get into Oxford and Cambridge. Other signs, you work obsessively. You want to work. You don't work just because you're told to by your teacher or your parents. You do this because you want to do it. You enjoy working. You enjoy studying. You enjoy a good academic debate. You're not afraid to get into a discussion, okay? You absorb pressure well. There is a lot of pressure because there's shorter academic terms at Oxford and Cambridge, therefore more intensive, therefore more pressure. Okay, so if you don't absorb pressure well, you're not really suitable for going to a top university. You don't mind self-directed study. That means you're happy with independent study, because at places like Oxford and Cambridge, you will have to do a lot of independent reading, a lot of independent research. You are not told everything. You are not spoon-fed all of the information by the teachers. Also, if you're after somewhere small and close-knit, because Oxford and Cambridge, they are made up of something called the collegiate system, where you will be based in one college, and you will generally socialize with students from that college as opposed to everyone from that university. And so it tends to be a smaller, more intimate environment. If you're the sort of student who basically expects your parents or your agent or your teacher to basically do everything for you, honestly, reconsider Oxford or Cambridge, because that tells me you're not suitable. At least 2 years of outstanding preparation is required to get to any top university. Most students in the UK will start preparing in terms of extracurricular activities and reading and work experience from around age 15. Reading is time consuming, it's hard work, it can be boring, right? You've got to start early. Work experience, again, requires research. It's not easy to get, especially during COVID. And so you must have a lot of initiative and you must be very committed. To finish off, let me just quickly introduce my school to you. I have to do this, otherwise my boss will shout at me. And so I work for a group of schools in the UK called MPW. We have 3 campuses in the UK. We have one in London, the capital city, one in Cambridge, one in Birmingham. Birmingham is the number 2 city in the UK, in case you have not heard of Birmingham. And so if Tokyo is like London, then I guess Osaka would be like Birmingham. But honestly, Osaka is way nicer, of course, because it's Japan. Okay, so a little bit of an introduction. We are actually a British school. We're a UK school who also accept international students. We are not one of those schools which are 100% international and like 60% from mainland China. We are not like that. We are a British school, mostly British, about 70% UK, 30% international, very few students from mainland China, actually, because we are education first. We are not money first. And a lot of students from China simply can't meet our English requirements, for example. We offer guaranteed maximum class sizes, okay? Because remember, we are education first. And so for GCSEs and A levels, we offer a guaranteed class size of 9 students max. For foundation, a guaranteed class size of 14 students maximum. We can help students with any type of subject that they want to study. Business, economics, art, computing, science, law, anything you want, we can help with, okay? International relations, politics, sociology, anything like this. However, we have become famous in the UK for the competitive courses. And so things like medicine, dentistry, vet science, that wasn't on purpose. It's something that just happened, where we started to get a lot of success sending students to medicine, things like this. And then basically our reputation spread through word of mouth in the UK, and it just got bigger and bigger. And so we send a lot of students to medicine, dentistry, and vet science every single year. Over the past 3 years alone, just the past 3 years, it's almost 150 students. 2021 alone, we sent 47 students to medicine, dentistry, and vet science. Look, I cannot guarantee that we will get you into top universities, Oxford, Cambridge, LSE. I cannot guarantee that we will get you into the really competitive programs like medicine, dentistry, vet science. But what I can guarantee is you will not find a place which will offer better preparation for things like medicine and top unis than MPW. We will prepare you well. Every single year, around 70% of our students will go to Russell Group or University of London, and they're basically the universities that you want to go to. Statistically speaking, that's where you will go. And every single year, around a quarter of our students will go to Times Top 10 universities. We mentioned Times Top 10 because Times Top 10 is much more academic. There's also a ranking for The Guardian, but The Guardian ranking is a little bit odd because it's very much focused on student satisfaction, but also employment after graduation. But employment could be working at McDonald's, you know? And so, yeah, the Times is much more academic. If you are going to look at a ranking, yeah, just bear that in mind. Okay, so this is our London campus. This is actually the outside of our London school. We are based in Zone 1 in an area called South Kensington, a very, very nice, safe, central part of London. It's our biggest campus, around 600 students in London, located very, very close to all of the tourist areas and museums. we are actually renovating this building now. This is an artist's impression. This is going to be our new accommodation in London from September onwards. We can take students age 14 plus. Usually the maximum age is 25 actually. Okay. And so we can actually help older students with A levels and foundation. It's located on the same road as the Natural History Museum. And so if you've been to the UK as a tourist, you've certainly been to London, you've probably been to this area. If you've been to visit the Natural History Museum, you've been to where our school is and to where our accommodation is. Really, really nice location. You actually look down on the Natural History Museum if you go inside our building, and it is just 2 minutes walk to the school, 2 minutes. So super, super close to the school. Artist impressions of what it's going to be like. We're going to have an art studio there because we've got the University of Arts London Art Foundation. One of the common rooms where students can gather. We're going to have a rooftop terrace with a coffee shop there. All of the accommodation will be single ensuite. So every student will have their own shower, toilet, and sink. Lovely. This is our Cambridge campus. This is actually the entrance to our school. Only about 220 students in our Cambridge campus, walking distance to the city centre, 10 to 15-minute walk. This is our accommodation, because I keep on getting asked questions about accommodation every time I meet Japanese students. And so we have houses in Cambridge, and we've also got like student dorms type thing, student flats. You do not share any rooms. It's all single rooms. Okay. And so, yeah, no shared rooms. This is our Birmingham campus. And so this is actually the school. It is not located in the city centre, but it is located in a really nice, safe part of Birmingham called Edgbaston. And there's around 250 students in our Birmingham campus. Birmingham is by far the least expensive place to live and study. So if you are a bit worried about costs, then choose Birmingham. London, of course, is the most expensive. These are just some of our accommodation in Birmingham. Again, it's all single rooms. You do not share any rooms in Birmingham. And we have 2 blocks. One is right next door. One is just 10 minutes walk away. Thank you. So that is my webinar on tips on getting to top universities. I hope you found some of it useful, hopefully. And so listen, I will pass things back to Hiroshi now. Thank you very much for taking the time to actually attend this webinar with MPW and SIUK. I really appreciate it, giving up some of your Saturday. Thank you very much. If you do have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I'll stop talking now and I'll pass it back to you, Hiroshi. Thanks, Hiroshi.
Thank you very much for your presentation. はい、本日はプレゼンテーションしていただきましてありがとうございました。はい、そうですね、今から、質問の時間になるんですけれども、もしですね、何かご質問等ありましたら、こちらのチャットボックスの方に、お気軽にご質問をしていただけたらと思います。日本語でも英語でも構いませんので、お気軽にですね、何か、本当に街のことだったりでもいいと思いますし、学校のプログラムの内容とかですね、留学生のサポートとか、どういったものがあるのかっていうことについても気軽に聞いていただけたらと思います。はい。そうですね。何かございますでしょうか。はい。そうですね。ちょっとまだご質問が届いてないようですので、ちょっと私の方でご質問をしてみたいと思います。はい。Andy, thank you very much for your presentation. Actually, I have a question about support for international students. Actually, yeah, today we have some students who are considering applying for a foundation course. And then, a lot of Japanese students are very concerned about English. Yeah, so, I just would like to know more about English support for international students during foundation or A level course. Do you have?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so if you study foundation in the UK, then first of all, there are no UK students which do foundation program, right? So it's just international students who study foundation. And really on any foundation program that you do, usually there will be English training or IELTS training as part of that foundation program. Usually it should be part of your timetable. And so you will be able to improve your English as you study foundation. Do not be afraid, for example, if you are studying foundation at MPW and say, for example, you do not understand a word, that's fine. Put your hand up, just stop the teacher. Hey, teacher, I'm really sorry. I don't quite understand what that word means, right? They will stop the lesson and they will explain what the word means and they will make sure that you understand before they carry on. Do not be afraid to do this because remember, if you do not understand that word, then there's a very, very good chance that your classmates also do not understand that word as well because all of your classmates on foundation are international kids. And so do not be afraid to stop teachers and ask them questions. You know, they are more than happy to help you. I strongly recommend whilst you were in Japan, do as much English study as possible. Practice, practice, practice your speaking, practice your writing, go to English language schools, get an English teacher for your speaking and writing, read, right? If you can do any kind of preparation, any kind of academic preparation for your studies, it's that basically. It's English, English, English all the way. With regards to MPW, so we're quite a selective school actually. So yeah, we've got quite high IELTS requirements. If you want to come and do A levels with us, you have to pass a maths exam, for example, if you want to study maths at A level, and you have to pass that exam to come to MPW. But a lot of students, if they are doing, for example, 2-year A levels, you can enter 2-year A levels at MPW with IELTS 5.5 overall, no section less than 5.0. But you've got to remember, that's the very, very minimum requirement. It's always better to have higher than the minimum, okay? And so if we're asking for 5.5 as a minimum, the recommended entry level, I would recommend you try to enter at 6.5 overall, plus 6.5 in writing, if you can. And the reason why for MPW is if you can enter with 6.5 overall plus 6.5 in writing, number one, you're much more likely to get top grades on your A levels, okay? Number two, easy for you to settle into the UK life. You will make friends with internationals, you will make friends with UK domestic students, you will understand everything the teacher says, all of that. Number three, top universities, Russell Group, will often ask for that anyway. They will often ask for 6.5 in all sections, okay? Or 6.5 overall. And so by getting that before you start, that's already one thing already done. But also a big reason with MPW is if you enter with less than 6.5 overall and less than 6.5 in writing, we will make you do additional IELTS training until you reach that level. Okay, and so and our IELTS training is actually very, very good. I've noticed students have improved significantly with just 1 or 2 terms of our IELTS training. And so it works. Whatever our teachers do, it works. But it will cost you extra money, right? If you have to do this IELTS training. And so it's always better to enter, I think, with 6.5 overall, 6.5 in writing, to try and avoid this IELTS training, but you can enter with 5.5 and get some additional IELTS training alongside your A levels. But honestly, if you have free time in Japan, English, 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 that's what you should be doing for sure. Hope that answers a question, Hiroshi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, could I also ask the English requirement for foundation course?
Foundation course. So we have something called NC UK Foundation, and we ask for 5.5 for that as well, actually. Yeah, 5.5 for that. No section less than 5.0.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
はい。今ですね、質問として、ファンデーションとか A レベルのコースに入学した場合、どういった、留学生のための、サポートがあるのかっていうご質問を、させていただいたんですけれども、もちろんファンデーションのコースの中にもそういった 英語のトレーニングのカリキュラムっていうのは含まれておりますし、実際入学して授業中にわからないことがあったら、しっかりとご質問していただいたら、全然していただいて大丈夫と。で、先生方もしっかりと意味を答えてくれるということなので、そこは恥ずかしがらずに全然聞いていただけたらということと、あとは入学する前にですね、しっかり日本で英語を勉強していただくということが大事になります。特にA レベルと呼ばれる、日本でいう高校課程のプログラムがあるんですけれども、このプログラムに入る場合は、6.5 以上の、5.5 が必要なんですけど、実際は 6.5 の英語力が必要ということになってくる。そのぐらいのスコアを取っていれば望ましいということになるんですね。これはファンデーションにも同じようなことが言えるかなと思いますので、実際ファンデーションも先ほどあった通り 5.5 というのがあったんですけど、しっかり日本で高い英語力を取っておくと、実際入学した後、トップの成績を取れたりとか、その授業を受けていくのも簡単に感じるようになるとか、あとはトップの大学に実際入る際も、英語力というものを証明できるので、はい。あとは MPW の方では追加で IELTS のトレーニング等もあるということですので、はい。そういったものを利用していくことも可能ということですね。はい。はい。I got one question from the student. Thank you.
I
It was
can
very
see it, Hiroshi. Is it from student F, that one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, hello,
Yeah.
student F. I'm sure that's not your real name. Okay, thank you for your question. And thank you for your thank yous. Okay, so you're asking, student F is asking, I think there are a wide range of students at MPW. Do you separate classes by their academic level, or are they all together in one class? That's a really good question. Okay, so if a school has big class sizes, like for example, 30 students in a class, then big schools would normally separate the students by academic ability. So for example, the school that I went to, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, who is this weird looking Chinesey faced boy who's speaking such good English? My parents are from Hong Kong, but I was born in England. I was born there, raised there, grew up there. I am from the UK, which is why I speak good English. It's not because I studied English hard. I am not a good boy. I cheated, right? I was born there. The school that I went to, it was 30 students per class. It was actually a good school. And they would basically separate it by levels. There was A, B, and C. So A being the top level, the smartest student, C being the worst student. I was always B. I was so average, it hurt. I certainly wasn't in the top A set for any of the subjects, which is a little bit disappointing. But that was when there were 30 students per class. MPW, we only have 9 students per class, remember, for GCSEs and A levels. And so what we do at MPW, we will not separate students according to academic ability, because by having a maximum of 9 students per class, it allows teachers to do something called differentiated learning, right? And that basically means you can teach different students at a slightly different pace in a smaller class. You can't do that in a big class. You simply can't do that. You can only teach them at one pace. But with smaller classes, you can have something called differentiated learning. If students are very smart, so what we call the gifted and talented students, these students are ambitious. They want to go to places like Oxford, Cambridge. They want to do courses like medicine, dentistry, vet science. We will put these students into additional classes, right? So the gifted and talented students will get put into Oxbridge training classes, where they will get additional subject training, additional help regarding preparation for exams and interviews and things like this. Those interested in the very competitive science programs like medicine, dentistry, vet science, they will get put onto the medic training program, where again, they get additional teaching, additional training, interview training, personal statement help, that kind of thing. And so gifted and talented students are given access to more classes, more activities. But in terms of teaching, it's done with small classes, small numbers, but differentiated. We can teach them at a different pace because it's small, because of the small numbers. Hope that answers your question, student F. And your English seems very good as well. You typed it all in Englishgo. Very impressive.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
はい、今の質問は、そうですね、アカデミックレベルによってクラスを分けているのかということで、MPW ではそういうそのアカデミックレベルでクラスは分けないんですけれども、1クラスあたり9人ということなので、 その分、少人数で、授業をすることができると。ディファレンシエイティッドラーニングということで、先生がその一人一人に合わせて、しっかり対応しながら授業を進めることができるということなので、そういった意味で、アカデミックレベルで、クラスを分けていないということですね。で、また、それぞれの学生さんによって、トレーニング、追加のトレーニングを、なんていうんですかね、貸したりすることもあるということですので、そういった形で本当個人個人に合わせて、しっかりとトレーニングをしていくということが、可能というものですね。はい。もう一つ質問が来ております。私はアーキテクチャを大学で学びたいと考えています。MPW での授業について詳しく知りたいのと、MPW の卒業生の進路、イギリスでのアーキテクチャの概要について、知りたいということですね。I have another question about student D. The student is considering studying architecture in the UK, and then they would like to know about the lectures at MPW, maybe to progress to architecture bachelor's degree in the future, and then, or like a destination university, something like that.
Okay. So if you're serious about architecture and if you want to keep all of your university options open in the UK, I would personally recommend that you do A levels, right? Architecture is actually quite an unusual course in that there's kind of three subjects that you kind of have to study for architecture, really. And that's maths, physics, and art. Okay, because you've got to be good at maths and physics for architecture. That's the most important thing, is actually maths. It's the most important thing. But also, as architecture has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's grown in popularity, universities now, most universities who offer architecture will also want to see a portfolio from the students. Okay, and so it's actually quite difficult in that students have to be very clever and good at the traditional subjects like maths and physics, but also good at drawing as well. Okay, and so, there aren't many students who kind of tick all of those boxes. Some students might be good at the academic subjects, but not very good at the creative side of things like drawing. Other students may be great artists, wonderful, beautiful artists, but not very good at maths and physics. You've kind of got to be good at it all for architecture. And so the question you need to ask yourself is, look, are you good at maths? Are you good at physics? And have you actually studied any art and design now, which is usually the problem. Because most students will have studied maths and physics in school, but you may not have studied art and design. And so I would certainly recommend, if you haven't studied any art, maybe go to some art training schools like in Japan to try and get some portfolio skills and portfolio preparation, because you will have to submit a portfolio as part of your architecture application. And doing art A levels is not quite as easy as it sounds. A lot of students think, oh, that sounds really easy, dead easy. I can get an A star in that. First of all, there's a lot of work doing art A levels because you have to do a lot of the work in your own time. So you're actually putting together and drawing and creating your final pieces in your own time. And secondly, the expectations for getting a good grade will be quite high at A level standard. And so it is not an easy course just to study. Do not expect to get a good grade. Do not expect to find lots of free time available, because you won't have it if you do art. And so it's good to maybe get some art training in whilst you're in Japan. Some universities may actually have architecture specific foundation programs. Not many, but some may do. Others, you may have to do an engineering foundation, but then engineering foundation will not include art, which means you have to study art on your own. And that's difficult, right? Because it's very difficult to get a good portfolio without any kind of formal training. But just remember, the three important subjects for you will be maths, physics, art, but maths and physics are the most important out of all three. Sorry, Hiroshi, I give too much information. You have to translate all of that. Sorry about that. It's horrible. Translating is horrible.
Okay.
Good luck with that.
I'm going to briefly translate.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your answer. はい、そうですね、今の、回答ですね、簡単にお伝えすると、建築を学ぶ上では数学だったり、物理だったり、アートなどですね、の分野でしっかりと勉強しておく必要があるというようなことになりますね。あとは、ドローイング、何かを書いたりとか、 ということが重要になってくるかなというところです。で、そういったアートデザインを学ぶためには、何かトレーニングコースですね、日本で、アートの専門学校とか、何かそういったコースですね、受けておくっていうのも大事になってくるというところになります。あとは、ポートフォリオが必ず必要になってくるので、そういった作品集ですね、を事前にご準備いただくということになります。で、A レベルに入るにしろ、あとはその建築用のファンデーションコースを持っている大学もあるので、そういったところへの、そういったことについても考慮していくことは可能かなというところですね。はい。And I'm sorry, we have a final question. Is that okay for you?
Of course, yeah, I've seen this. And so this is from student C. Is that
Yeah.
right, Hiroshi?
Yeah.
Thank you for your question, student C. So you're thinking about studying economics in the UK. In order to get accepted onto a foundation, do you need to have high grades in subjects that aren't really relevant to economics? Okay, so you've just graduated from high school in Japan. Okay, so the important thing is that you're good at maths. Okay, so that's really, really important for economics, especially at university level. So at A-level standard, economics, I would say English is more important if you're studying economics at A-level standard. At A-level standard, it's maybe about 80% English, 20% maths. However, at university standard, in particular at a good university, if you want to go to somewhere like LSE to study economics, that's when maths will start becoming much more important. And it will start becoming much more complex as well, the maths. And so maths is key. Now, you're asking if you got some not so good grades in subjects that aren't relevant to economics. So what most providers will look at is your overall GPA, is usually what they will look at when deciding entry onto a foundation program. However, there is also flexibility. It really depends on, the university, the school, the foundation provider, because some will just look at your overall GPA. Others will look at specific subjects, in particular, maths, for example. Maths is the most important thing. You do not have to have studied economics or business in order to do economics foundation or to study economics at A-level. Don't worry, but maths is essential. You must have done maths. And you must have got a good score in maths as well, okay? So if they do look at any particular subject, they're going to look at maths for sure, but most places will just look at an overall GPA. But actually, since you finish high school, I think you shouldn't worry too much. My advice to you, student C, and this is genuine advice, is you talk to SIUK, talk to Hiroshi, talk to a consultant there, because there are many, many, many places that can help you with what you need is a business foundation. That's basically what you need. And then a business foundation can lead on to economics. But you need to have a chat with a consultant. You need to give them feedback about your GPA, your high school performance, your IELTS level, the sort of universities that you are considering going to, what you want in a university, what you do not want in a university, your budget, what you can afford, that kind of thing. And then SIUK will then basically say, right, based on what you've told me, we're thinking these providers could be suitable for you. And there are so many business pathway foundation providers that can lead on to economics. You're going to need some guidance from SAUK to help you to narrow down the options. And so, look, you've got nothing to worry about. The only thing you need to kind of worry about is just narrowing down the options because you have so many. But don't worry, because SIUK will help you with that. And so my honest advice to you, student C, is just arrange an appointment with a consultant in SIUK and they can walk you through all of the options. We can help you. MPW is an option. Yeah, we've got Business Foundation, but there are many, many options. And so usually it's overall GPA, those students see, yeah, but as long as you've got good maths, that's the important thing, the most important thing. Thank you. Hope that helps.
Thank you. はい、そうですね。こちらの方は、経済学を勉強されたいということで、ここの成績で、経済とは関係のない科目ですね、が、審査の対象になるのかっていうことなんですけれども、そうですね、基本的には、多くの大学っていうのは、そのオーバーオール、全体的な GPA を見てくるということになるようです。ただ、もし特定の科目を見るということであれば、経済であれば、その数学というのが非常に重要になってくると いうことですので、その数学で非常に高い成績を取っていると、有利になってくるんじゃないかということですね。ただ、実際もうすでに高校卒業されているということであれば、その成績というものはもう変えられないので、そこは心配するよりも、他のいろんな選択肢ですね、ビジネスファンデーションを持っている大学っていうのは他にもいろいろあったりしますし、いろいろな選択肢の中から選んで、どこに出願するかっていうのを、これから決めて、いろいろ絞っていくっていうことが大事になってくるということになってくるということですね。はい。それでは、ちょっとお時間少し過ぎてしまいましたけれども、今日はですね、MPW のウェビナーにご参加いただきまして、誠にありがとうございました。またですね、何かご質問とかですね、カウンセリングとか、ありましたら、ぜひ弊社の方にご連絡していただけましたら、分かる範囲でお答えさせていただいたりとか、また MPW の方に、アンディさんですね、ご質問をしたいということであれば、弊社の方から代行して連絡をさせていただくとか、ということもできますのでですね、ぜひ、弊社の方に一度ご連絡していただけたらと思います。はい。Andy, thank you very much for your presentation today. It was very helpful and informative. And yeah, so if we get any inquiries from students, we will get in touch with you.
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to speak to them. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hiroshi, for your time today and your great help. Sorry, I know translating is a real headache. I know it is. And so thank you for that. Thank you, SIUK. And thank you to the students for giving up some of your time on a Saturday to actually attend this webinar. I hope you found it useful. Best of luck with everything. Okay, good luck for the future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
はい、それでは終わりたいと思います。ありがとうございました。失礼いたします。Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Bye.